Hello and a very warm welcome to another edition of Talking Germany, the show where we do just that. And my guest today is the author, activist and polemicist Jürgen Todenhöfer. Here he is. Thank you very much for joining us on Talking Germany today. Now, I haven't told you anywhere near the full story yet because Jürgen Todenhöfer is a former judge, former politician, former corporate executive. What's more, he's visited many of the world's trouble spots in recent years and he has never shied away from controversy. For some, he's an attention seeker and a loose cannon. For others, he's one of the few people in public life here in Germany who is really willing to tackle some of the tough questions. One thing is certain, it'll be interesting to hear his views on the following topics. Humility or heroism? Jürgen Todenhöfer's journey has, he says, made him more humble, and his message is change the world by sharing your happiness. Coming home as Germany slowly begins to withdraw its forces from Afghanistan, the question now is, what has the 10-year deployment achieved? And hope against hope. An estimated 120,000 people here in Germany suffer from multiple sclerosis. One of them is our guest's youngest daughter. Jürgen Todenhöfer, thank you very much once again for joining us today. Now, I was thinking about what I would say to colleagues and friends from abroad, from outside Germany, who don't know you, and how I would describe you to them. And the word that I came up with was maverick. Is that a word that you can relate to?
No.
A maverick, according to the dictionary definition, is somebody who goes against the grain, against the system, who does things in the political context in his own way.
Yeah, then it's okay.
That's okay.
Correct. Yeah.
You can live with that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you're a searcher for the truth. That's how you've described yourself.
Yeah, that's very important for me. I'm a fan of truth. I read Goethe, Dichtung und Wahrheit.
Yeah.
It was one of his last books, and he says, I'm looking for the truth and justice. These are the two things that pushed Goethe, and I think I'm not a Goethe, but I'm looking for truth and justice too. Truth is very important.
You're looking for truth and justice. Have you found it?
No, but to find truth, you have to be behind the scene. You have to be very close to the things that happen. So if you talk about a war in Afghanistan or in Iraq or in Syria, you have to go there. And you have to go to the places which are dangerous, to the hotspots. Otherwise, you will never know the truth. And you have to speak with both sides. So in Syria, you have to speak with the rebels, but you have to speak also with Assad and the government.
Okay. And we will speak to you very shortly about the conversation you had with Mr. Assad. So you've had your first impressions there of Jürgen Todenhöfer. Here is more.
A glass of red wine, music, and playing soccer in Munich's English Garden. For Jürgen Todenhöfer, this is what happiness and contentment are all about. He may be retired from politics and business, but he's still always on the move. Todenhöfer was born in Oldenburg in 1940. His father was a judge. When he was 19, he visited Africa and witnessed the atrocities committed by French colonialists. He went on to study law, earn a doctorate, and become a judge himself. He was elected to Parliament as a member of the conservative Christian Democrats. But his views on freedom and justice didn't always mesh with those of party leader Helmut Kohl. Between 1980 and 1984, Todenhöfer paid a number of secret visits to resistance fighters in war-torn Afghanistan. As party spokesperson for disarmament in Parliament, he didn't want to be just an armchair warrior. He wanted to see what was happening in Soviet-occupied Afghanistan firsthand. He's also an outspoken critic of the NATO mission in Afghanistan and the American invasion of Iraq. He went on to become a top executive of a media company, but he continued his undercover visits to conflict zones. In 2007, he went to Iraq. Later, he wrote a bestseller about the Iraqi resistance. He bought space in a leading American newspaper to protest the occupation. It's 10 to 1, he said. The West has killed 10 Muslims for every Westerner who has been killed. And millions of Arab civilians have been killed since colonialism began. His travels often put him in danger, as did his recent Libya trip. He only narrowly escaped the rocket attack. Thanks to his good contacts, he was one of the few foreigners able to visit Syria and witness the protests and repression there firsthand. Jürgen Todenhöfer wants to end suffering and share his good fortune. Instead of saving his inheritance for his 3 children, he's donated most of his wealth. And today, he's our guest on Talking Germany. Jürgen Todenhöfer.
Who's a very good footballer, I can tell by looking at that. Yeah,
yeah, I love it.
You love it, so do I. We've got to go back there. There was an awful lot of impressions in that report, and I'd like to begin with you. There were some images of you as a very dashing-looking young man, 19, 20, in North Africa.
I was quite
Tunisia.
good looking at this age.
Oh, yeah? That was your first confrontation with, I suppose, what you might call the horror of war.
Yeah, it was amazing. I was a student in Paris and I went to Algeria. I couldn't afford another journey because Algeria was quite close and I had almost nothing to pay. And the war in Algeria was very cruel. And I lived this war together with Algerian people and together with La Légion d'honneur, La Légion étrangère, with the French and German soldiers. And I saw what war is. And then I came to Tunisia, Bizerta, and there was the crisis of Bizerta. And during this crisis, the French killed...
Explain what that was for our audience.
It was a French base. Tunisia was already independent, and this French base was attacked by the Tunisians, and the French killed more than 1,000 people, and they evacuated the whole city, and of course I had to go there, and I was arrested by the French police, and after a certain time they released me, but I saw what it is, war. And
what did you see?
I saw many destroyed houses, and I spoke to Tunisians who were in hospitals in Tunis, and I saw horribly injured people for nothing, just for a French base in Tunisia. And I don't find any reason for wars, and all the wars I have seen after this time have been unjustified and horrible and didn't make any sense.
Are you a pacifist?
No. I'm not a pacifist.
It sounds as though you're a pacifist. Why are you...
I think more than 99% of the wars are unnecessary. But if my country would be attacked by an enemy, by a neighbor, and I would think that I would say I'm ready to defend my country. But usually it's not the case. The United States weren't attacked by Vietnam, weren't attacked by Afghanistan, weren't attacked by Iraq.
The United States were attacked.
They were attacked by terrorists. And if you are attacked by terrorists, you have to make a counter-attack with special police forces, like Obama did a year ago when he caught bin Laden.
So that was a justified action for you?
This was a justified action. As a judge, I say they did not have the right to kill him. They had the right to arrest him. But there are situations of battle where it can happen that the person you want to catch is killed. And therefore, I didn't condemn this action. But I condemned the bombardment of Kabul. Because during the bombardment of Kabul, they killed innocent people. And they attacked and they bombarded also villages near Tora Bora. And I went to Tora Bora with the permission of the Taliban, and I met young people, a young girl, 13 years old, and a boy, 18 years old. They lost 3 sisters and their parents, and now they have to be the parents of their younger children. And I saw all this misery, and therefore I say to all these politicians, stop lying, stop telling us that these wars are necessary. These wars are perhaps necessary for the reputation of George W. Bush and perhaps for the re-election of Barack Obama. But they are not necessary for humanity.
Of course, a lot of people, not just the Americans, many people would say that these wars have been necessary as a war on terror. I don't think we've got time to talk about that. Let's talk about something else that is very...
I was a judge against German terrorists, the Red Army fraction.
Yeah.
You don't fight against terrorists by bombarding. If you have terrorists in London, you don't bombard London.
So you don't use violence to combat violence. That's the bottom line.
You can use violence against the terrorists, but you don't bombard a whole quarter. You don't bombard a whole city. That's just silly.
Let's talk about one of your most recent journeys. You went to Syria.
Yeah.
Perhaps we can look at some images of your trip to Syria.
Yeah.
And perhaps you could just tell me what we're looking at here.
This is Homs. This is the hometown of the revolution. That's the hot spot. The hot spot of this revolution. I was told I couldn't go there. They would kill me. They would cut my nose and my ears. But you see,
there you are.
Demonstrators were very kind with me. They helped me.
How come you could go there?
I went there with a member of the opposition, secretly. Nobody could control me.
So on the one hand, you went to Homs, which is a centre of the rebellion against Assad, President Assad. But on the other hand, you also spoke to President Assad.
Yeah.
What did he tell you? What was his message?
Here we are, and at this moment we are in a crossfire. Some policemen on the left-hand side were attacked from rebels on the right-hand side, and we just escaped. And as I told you, you have to speak to both sides. And I asked to speak to the president, and he said yes, and we spent 2 hours together, more than 2 hours together, in a very open discussion, very tough and very fair discussion.
Did he listen to what you had to say?
He invited me because he wanted to listen to what I say.
With open ears?
He was very open-minded, he was very open, and he said, democracy is compulsory. And I said, take the lead of this movement.
Do you think he will?
He has proposed
Short answer, do you think he will?
Yeah. He would like, but there are strong forces in the government which don't want. So what we should do is not to attack him every day, is to say, you have proposed a referendum about the constitution.
So we should
yes, we will help you.
We should hold him at his word.
Yeah, that's exactly what we should do. We should negotiate, like we did in former times when Kissinger went to Israel to negotiate with the Palestinians or with the Israelis.
OK, so the bottom line for Jürgen Todenhöfer is...
negotiate.
Negotiate. Not war. Violence, not war, negotiations. Let's shift the focus back to one of the countries that you've been talking about, to Afghanistan, where, as we've already seen, Germany, like its allies, is slowly beginning to withdraw its troop contingent. Now, German forces have been in Afghanistan for more than a decade, and for that whole time, there's been fierce debate about what the mission has achieved.
Our responsibility for peace and freedom in the world demands our sacrifice.
Since January 2002, more than 50 German soldiers have been killed in Afghanistan. The government offers its condolences, but the public takes little notice. 10 years ago, when German troops headed to Afghanistan, no one gave much thought to how the mission would end. At first, no one even wanted to call it a war. But soon Germany was forced to admit it was a war against an opponent who fought back with all means at its disposal. In Germany, the political response was to intensify operations and stay the course. But now the alliance is heading home. All German and NATO troops plan to withdraw by 2014. The original plan to rebuild Afghanistan has been scaled back. But officially, Germany still puts on a public face of resolve.
We are determined to fulfill our mission for a better future for Afghanistan and for our own security.
Lofty words, a worthy ambition. But many have paid a high price.
More than 50 German soldiers have died in Afghanistan. Have they died in vain?
Completely in vain.
Completely in vain. Those are hard, hard words
Sent
for the
by,
parents of those soldiers,
yeah,
for their loved
unfortunately,
ones.
I met many soldiers, German soldiers, and also American and British soldiers in Afghanistan, and I met great guys. But I would not say that the politicians who sent them there are great guys.
Did you, when you met these soldiers, did you say to them, your comrades who have died in combat or however in Afghanistan have died in vain?
No, that's difficult to say to a soldier. But I asked them, why are you here? And they didn't have answers. I never found a soldier. I never found an American officer. I never found a diplomat in Afghanistan who could explain to me why we are there. They cannot.
I mean, you're saying this to me, and I have not been to Afghanistan, but I've spoken. Yeah, but I've spoken to, for example, the EU's envoy to Afghanistan. I've spoken to Tom Koenigs, the German politician, who I'm sure you know, who was the United Nations special envoy to Afghanistan. These people and others have told me that the mission is ultimately, despite everything, worthwhile.
No. If you have a real discussion, I think some people are obliged to tell you it's the ultimate possibilities. But when you have a real discussion at the end, they say, we don't know really. We are here, what they say at the end, we are here because we are an ally of the United States. And then I ask, but why are the United States still here? And they say, a superpower just cannot leave like that. That's all they say. They have no real answer. Okay. I go to Afghanistan. I've been in Afghanistan the first time 30 years ago. And this war in Afghanistan is as irresponsible as the war of the Soviets in Afghanistan. And I could never imagine, when I was under the Soviet occupation in Afghanistan, I could never imagine that we could do and make the same mistake. Never.
But you know what the next question is going to be, because you've been there before. You know that I'm going to ask you what will happen when, as is now planned, the troops come home.
There will be troubles. But I think the only possibility is what we are doing, what the West is doing now, to ask the Taliban to participate in a new government,
The Taliban are not nice guys.
No. And when I say you have to negotiate with the Taliban, it doesn't mean that I'm a fan of the Taliban. When I say you have to negotiate with Assad, I don't say I'm a fan of Assad. And when we said we have to negotiate with the Russians, the Soviets, we did not say we are fans of the Soviets. Mm-hmm. It's especially when you have problems with somebody.
But the thing with the Taliban is we know about the Taliban. They have a very, very bad track record.
Yeah, they have the same policy as Saudi Arabia. And we have very good relations with Saudi Arabia. They make the same policy.
So two bads make a good?
No, but the Saudis are the best friends of UK, the best friends of the United States, the best friends of Germany. So there is a possibility to negotiate with these people. And I spoke to Taliban commanders under very difficult circumstances, and they have told me, we have learned a lesson too. We have made mistakes, and of course, girls will go to schools. Of course, girls will have the possibility to go to schools. Not in the same rooms as boys, but they will go to school again. This was a big mistake of the Taliban, and they know it.
The negotiations are taking place, I understand, even as we sit here and speak, so we will probably come to know where all that will lead in the not-too-distant future.
Yeah, but we didn't need 10 years of war to have these negotiations.
It's been a long war.
Yeah, but what for? We could invite the Taliban also 10 years ago to Germany, to the Petersburg conference.
We'll have to leave that one there, yeah? Now, we'd like to give viewers who can read German, and I know that there are a lot of you who can, we'd like to give you the chance to win a package of no fewer than 3 of Jürgen Todenhöfer's books. All you have to do is to write to us, including your comments on the show. So either send a letter to DWTV Talking Germany team at Wolterstrasse 6 in 13355 Berlin, Germany. Just as good, of course, an email to talkinggermany@dwworld.de. And just one thing to bear in mind, please get your mail to us within 14 days. Now, a very different matter. Share Your Happiness is the title of one of those books by Jürgen Todenhöfer that I've just been mentioning. But you have to ask the question, how much happiness do you have to share if and when you're confronted with a grave illness?
Susie and Gio have been together for 22 years.
It's the same as any other couple. We fell in love, and we've been lucky, so it lasted.
Susie was a university student, and Gio was doing his alternative military service when they met and fell in love. 8 years later, she was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis. That was 14 years ago.
Okay, Susie. Do you already know what you want to eat today?
Susie has to spell out her reply. She can understand everything, but hasn't spoken in 10 years. Gio is an artist. He paints, takes pictures, and makes films. Susie's illness has also changed his life. He's always been there for her. Day and night, he organizes his life around hers. Susie is one of more than 120,000 people with multiple sclerosis in Germany. People with MS have repeated attacks, and the disease can affect them in many different ways.
When you look at our external circumstances, just from a practical point of view, our partnership isn't what either Susie or I would have wanted. But I don't believe life is about everything being perfect, about things working as you'd planned. I don't think that's what makes us truly happy.
Gio has 3 hours to himself a day when a nurse cares for Susie. Right now, he's hanging up one of his paintings for a client. Gio is optimistic and resilient, but he sometimes hits his limit.
I'm flagging a bit. It's getting harder to carry Susie around, and I'm starting to feel the stress.
That means more improvisation and new solutions. As a caregiver for Susie, Gio is a master of that.
We were very moved by that report, yeah, and the commitment of the husband there, yeah, to his partner. It's fantastic, isn't it?
It's great.
Yeah.
This guy shares his happiness, and he has no happiness, really.
It's a paradox, but it's an amazing thing, isn't it? Yeah. Your daughter. Can we have a look at a photo of your daughter, because this is why we're talking about this. Yeah.
Yeah.
Your daughter was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis at the age of 19.
Yes, 7 years ago.
Yeah,
she just finished
there we are,
her
there's the two of you.
high school exam in London.
What was it like when you heard that news?
We couldn't believe it. We just broke down. Life changed completely. That's the thing is, you cannot help. You want to defend your children. I can defend my children with my hand if somebody attacks my children. But if an illness attacks your children, your child, you can't do anything. You're completely helpless. And I see that she has much more courage than I have, and she's fighting against this illness. She's taking care of other ill people. And she's talking about the time where she would perhaps need a wheelchair, and I'm just speechless. And admiring her, and admiring people who, as I said, share their happiness without being happy.
This is because you talked just now about the paradox of happiness.
Yeah.
That you have no reason, really, to be happy, but then you do. I have a quote from your daughter, Jürgen. It's very interesting. She said, Natalie said, people moan, people complain about what they've got, but then there are other people, they don't have that. They're really suffering.
But that's correct. She's a much bigger philosopher than I am. I learn a lot from her. And she knows what will happen in 10 years. She knows what will happen in 20 years. And she says, I'm facing that, and I will fight it. She hopes that she will always be clear in her head. And she says, if I lose my body, so I will lose my body, but please allow me to continue to be the leader of my foundation, to help other ill people.
I was going to ask you about the foundation, which you're involved in that as well. What are the actual aims of the foundation? What does it do?
I'm not really involved. I gave a lot of money to the foundation, but she runs the foundation, and they help MS people which are at the same time poor. which cannot afford the reparation of a car, which cannot afford the reparation of the kitchen or something like that. And she not only helps them materially, she goes there, she talks with them, she spends time with them, she helps the family, and she spends so much time. And I say, Natalie, how can you survive if you see all this memory, this misery? And she says, I have to go there, I have to be with them. They have the right to have me with them.
Okay. On that note, thank you for sharing that with us. Thank you very much indeed. We're going to have to leave it there, this edition of Talking Germany. Our guest has been Jürgen Todenhöfer. He's an interesting guy, and he's told us the fascinating story of his courageous daughter. If you've enjoyed his company as much as I have, then do come back next week. Until then, bye-bye and tschüss.